Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are in a good health. Alright, in this occasion, we will learn and discuss about student-teacher relationship. But before we start, let me introduce our group member. First, I am Heni Safera as the moderator and the presenter. And then we have Azmi Sauki as the presenter. Then Julia Pasmawati as the presenter. And then we have Febri Pratama Putra as the presenter. And the last, we have Muhammad Mustami Aldafa as the presenter. This is the table of content for today's material, such as Step 1, use specific technique to establish an appropriate level of dominance in the classroom. Step 2, use specific behavior that communicate an appropriate level of cooperation. Step 3, be aware of the needs of different types of students. Alright, for the first material will be explained by Azmi Sauki. To Azmi, time is yours.
Alright, thank you, moderator. I will explain resources and theory about relationship teacher and student. The third aspect of effective classroom management, after rules and procedures and disciplinary intervention, is teacher-student relationship. Without the foundation of a good relationship, student commonly resist rules and procedures along with the consequent disciplinary action. Researchers have tried repeatedly to identify general characteristics of teachers that make them more likable to students and consequently more likely to have good relationship with students. In terms of classroom management techniques, one of the most useful efforts to identify the dynamic of an effective teacher-student relationship is the work of Theo Wabels and his colleagues. They identify two dimensions whose interaction define the relationship between teacher and student. One dimension is dominance versus submission. The other is cooperation versus opposition. One, high dominance is characterized by clarity of purpose and strong guidance. This is certainly positive characteristic. However, high dominance can also be characterized by a lack of attentiveness to and concern for the interests of students. 2. High submission is opposite of high dominance. 3. High cooperation is characterized by a concern for needs and opinions of others and a desire to function as a member of team as opposed to an individual. But extreme cooperation is characterized by an inability or lack of resolve to act without the input and approval of others. 4. High opposition is opposite of high cooperation. The set of the optimal teacher-student relationship profile in terms of dominance and cooperation you can see in this figure. Lion Chu and Michael Tully conducted a study that supports the conclusion of Wobbles and his colleagues. They interviewed 712 students in grades 4, 5, and 6. The students were presented with 4 options in terms of their preferences for the management style of teachers. That is, 1. Rules or rewards punishment, 2. Relationship listening, 3. Confronting, contracting, and 4. No preferred approach. Okay, that's all my material. I return back to the moderator.
Thanks, Azmi, for your explanation. Okay, the next material will be delivered by Julia Pasmawati. To Julia, please continue the material.
Alright, I will continue the material from Azmisoki. Video 4 provides a brief summary some types of problems students face in their lives and consequently the type of issues teacher must deal with. The research findings reported in Video 4. The several categories of problem student is homelessness, depression, suicide, violent students, eating disorders, alcoholism, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, sexual orientation, incorporated parents, poverty, sexual and physical abuse. Effective managers do not treat all the students the same, particularly in situations involving behavior problems, where some students need encouragement, other students need a gentle reprimand, and still others might require not a gentle reprimand. In fact, one strong recommendation by Brapi. Okay, then I will explain about the programs. Again, no one program focuses specifically on teacher-student relationship. However, one of the most popular staff development program is very strong in this area. The behavior are organized into the three chains: response, opportunity, feedback, and personal regards. The response opportunities and strength address equitable distribution of positive type of responses, helping individual student response latency. For example, for long teacher waits for students' responses and types of question. The feedback stern addresses affirmation of correct performance, praise, and reasons for praise, listening, and accepting feeling. The personal regret stern addresses proximity, courtesy, personal interest, touching, and desisting. At least two other areas are important to this communication. For the exhibiting assertive behaviors. Exhibiting assertive behaviors is one of the best ways to communicate a proper level of dominance is to exhibit assertive behavior that involve three primary categories. The one is use of assertive body language, like making and keeping eye contact, maintaining an erect posture. The second is use of appropriate tone of voice, speaking clearly and deliberately. And the third is persisting until the appropriate behavior is displayed, not ignoring an inappropriate behavior, not being diverted by a student day. Okay, I think that's all for me. Back to the moderator.
Alright, thanks Julia for your great explanation. Next, I will continue the material. It's about establishing learning goals. The second way to exhibit proper levels of dominance is to be very clear about the learning goals that are to be addressed in a unit, a quarter, or a semester. Related behaviors include the following. The first, establishing learning goals at the beginning of a unit of instruction. The second is providing feedback on those goals. The third, continually and systematically revisiting. And the last, the goals providing semantic feedback regarding the goals. The next material is providing flexible learning goals. Recall that dominance means that the teacher provides strong leadership not only in terms of classroom behavior, but also in terms of the content addressed in the class. For example, allowing students to set some of their own learning goals at the beginning of a unit or asking students what they would like to learn convey a sense of cooperation. In addition, you might ask students to identify some aspect of fractions or a related topic that is particularly interesting to them. This is not only has the potential to increase students' interest in the topic, but also convey the message that you are concerned about their interests and are making an attempt to include those interests in your instruction. Next is taking a personal interest in students. Virtually anything you do to show interest in students as individual has a positive impact on their learning. Here are some behaviors that communicate personal interest. The first, talking informally with students. The second, greeting students outside of school. The third, being aware of and commenting on important events in students' life. The next is complimenting students on important achievement in and outside of schools. The last, meeting students at the door as they come into class and saying hello to each child. For more example, you can read at the book. Okay guys, that's all the material from me. Thanks for the time. The next material will be continued by Muhammad Bustomi. To Bustomi, time is yours.
Thank you, moderator. I'll continue the presentation from Henny. The next is using equitable and positive classroom behavior. Such behavior of fostering teacher-student relationship are making eye contact with each student in the classroom, deliberately moving toward and being close to each student, attributing the ownership of idea to the student who initiated them, allowing and encouraging all students to part of the class discussion and interaction. Last, providing appropriate wait time for all students. Okay, the next material is responding appropriate to students' incorrect responses. The first one is emphasizing what was right. The second one is encouraging collaboration, restating the question, rephrasing the question, giving hints and cues, providing the answer and asking for elaboration. Last but not least, respecting the student's option to pass. The next is action step 3. There are 5 categories of high need students. Those are passive, aggressive, attention problem, perfectionist, and social inept. Passive. Passive categories divided into 2 subcategories. Those are fear of friendship and fear of failure. Fear of friendship. As a teacher, we must guide our each student's interaction by exhibiting kindness, consistency, and encouragement. And the next is fear of failure. As a teacher, we must encourage our students to evaluate what worked and what didn't work about their strategies on something. Okay, that's all. Back to moderator.
Thank you for your explanation, Bustomi. So guys, this is the last material will be explained by Febri Pratama. To Febri, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, moderator. I will continue material from Bustomi. The second is aggressive. The category of aggressive students comprise three subcategories: hostile, oppositional, and covert. These categories closely correspond to diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual or DSM published by the American Psychiatric Association 2000. The subcategory hostile is closely related to the clinical diagnosis of conduct disorder in the DSM. Characteristics of this disorder are poor anger control, poor impulse control, low capacity for empathy, a heightened sense of entitlement. The second subcategory of aggressive students is referred to as oppositional. These students exhibit milder forms or behavior problems than the hostile student. The third subcategory of aggressive is covert. Students does not have an identifiable DSM diagnosis, but these students are easily recognizable to most teachers. Third is attention problems. The category of attention problems contains two subcategories, hyperactive and inattentive. Both closely correspond to a specific DSM diagnosis. The subcategory of hyperactive corresponds to the DSM diagnosis of attention deficit or hyperactive disorder, predominantly hyperactive impulsive type. Characteristic of the hyperactive subcategory include poor impulse control, inability to stay seated or work quietly, propensity to blurt out question and answer. The subcategory of inattentive corresponds to the DSM classification of attention or deficit hyperactivity disorder predominantly identity type. Inattentive subcategory include failing to give close attention to details, rarely appearing to listen, having difficulty organizing tasks, forgetful in daily activities, and being easily distracted by extraneous stimuli. Fourth is perfectionist. The category of perfectionist closely corresponds to the DSM diagnosis, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Perfectionist students are driven to such at levels that are close to, if not unattainable. These students are often self-critical, have low self-esteem, and deep feelings inferiority and vulnerability. Fifth is sociality inept. Sociality inept child the student making and the friends they stand too close and touch others in annoying ways, talk too much, make stupid or embarrassing remarks, misread others' commands, and in general don't seem to fit in. They are often well-meaning students who are trying hard to relate to others. Okay, I think that's all. Back to moderator.
Thank you, Febri, for your explanation. Okay, guys, that's all the material today is about students-teacher relationship. We are so sorry if we have a mistake and thank you for watching this video. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.